Welcome back to the show, my friends. Today, I was joined by Alysa Seeland in the studio. She brought some of these delicious goodies in front of me here. She is the founder and CEO of FOND. Started off as a bone broth brand and is now getting into tallow and all kinds of other fun things that they tease in the show. Incredibly inspiring lady, a mom of 6 boys and a business owner and a founder who's overcome a lot of adversity, a fire that took out $5 million worth of product. How do you overcome such adversity? How do you do this whilst being a present mom? Some of the lessons from business building and also some of the practical applications for why you should be drinking more bone broth as a foundational food, why tallow, the ancestrally consistent fat, is the ultimate fat in the body. Is bone broth better than Botox? What can we learn from ancient nutrition and wisdom? All of it in this episode and more. Let's go. Alysa, welcome to the show. Thanks for making the drive to be with us today.
Yes, thank you for having me, Steve.
Yeah, I'm very excited. We got some of your beautiful products here, and for those that are listening, they won't be able to see it. So we are very fond of you. FOND is the name of your brand. Man, where to begin? You've got quite a story, overcoming adversity, growth, empowerment, all of it. I'm going to put it back in your court and let you take us on a bit of a journey and say, where did this idea even begin?
So I started FOND out of need. I like to tell people, when you build a product out of necessity, you do it differently. And that's where my story began. I was 5 months postpartum. I had been told I wouldn't get pregnant in the first place. I got pregnant. My midwife at the time was like, "You're so malnourished. I just want you to know you're probably going to lose the baby." We make it through all of that. I have a healthy 9-pound baby boy.
Big baby.
And I don't feel good after, right? And for 5 months, I go to the doctor and I'm like, something's not right. I've got this pain. Something's, because I'm listening to my body, right? And I'm trying, and I will never forget the doctor saying, "Well, we just need you to get sicker to figure out what's really going on."
Damn.
Well, it turns out a little bit sicker was a lot sicker. I had an emergency appendectomy, 5 months postpartum, all due to gut health issues. And it was very scary. Appendectomies aren't always life-threatening. They're always serious, but, mine was. And, my mom had to fly down, and I'll never forget saying goodbye to my husband and 5-month-old baby being like, wow, I hope I wake up.
Damn, yeah.
And I did, and I woke up, and 2 really interesting and life-changing things happened. I woke up craving chicken broth. And so I was like, oh, that's so interesting. And so I asked the nurse at the time, I was like, hey, do you have any chicken broth? And of course, I'm at this random hospital in a small town, and they were like, well, we have these like chicken flavoring packets. Do you want like a chicken flavoring packet? And I was like, sure. I mean, I just, it was, and so I thought that was really interesting. And then the second thing that happened was on the post-op, the surgeon said, hey, you're going to have a follow-up procedure in 6 to 12 months. And I was like, wow. I mean, I was 23 at the time, just had a baby, just had emergency surgery, and I'm looking at another procedure. It was 3 to 6 months down the road. And I was just like, this is not going to be the trajectory of my life. And so I researched, okay, how can you repair your gut from the inside out? And I found 2 things. I found the GAPS diet by Dr. Natasha Campbell, and I read Nourishing Traditions.
Fascinating.
And through that, I was like, okay, bone broth and meat stock are missing from my diet. And what do I have to lose? So I went on a 5-week bone broth diet, and that's when I kind of came up with the flavors, because since it was all that I was eating, it was essentially a very intense elimination diet, especially for the first week. I rebuilt my gut in a matter of time that I would have thought was unbelievable. So like in the first week, I only had meat broth and bone broth. And then in the second week, I would have meat broth with meat in it and bone broth with meat in it. And then I would have, the third week, I had pureed vegetables and sauerkraut juice, right? And then the fourth week, I was having hearty stews, right? So and then the 5th week, I was like, okay, I can have a salad or fresh fruit with some bone broth on the side. And just going through this very intuitive practice of listening to my body. And then finally, I felt better than I'd felt in my entire life. It was like, what is this? I didn't even know people could feel like that. And so I felt like I'd locked onto something that could help so many other people, and it was so simple. And when I would tell people about bone broth all the time, because you can imagine having an experience like that, I started recommending it for everything from like
Of course, yeah.
broken nails to
Yeah.
like back pain. I'm
Yeah.
like, you need bone broth. You need bone broth. Your
Yeah,
marriage
yeah.
is having trouble. You need bone broth. And people would say, it's too hard to make it. It doesn't even taste good. And I was like, huh. You know, that's just wasn't my experience. I'm a foodie. I love to create delicious things that also have a nourishing component to them. And so I decided to bring to the new Braunfels Farmers Market in 2015 2 coffee carafes full of bone broth. And I'll never forget, my husband was like, he dropped me off and he was like, I have no idea how this is going to go. Like, am I going to pick her up and she's going to be crying?
It's like, you're on your own with this one. Try and sell these people meat juice.
And he comes back and we're sold out.
Wow.
And it's to this day, 9 years later, is his favorite memory that, you know, we went there. People loved it. They didn't really know what it was that they were tasting. They were like, what is this deliciousness? But what's so cool about bone broth is like your body immediately can tell, okay, I can use this. I need this.
Yeah, there's that intuitive nudge, like waking up from the surgery and going like, give me chicken soup or give me the bone broth. Like, what is that? It's weird, but it's something as old as time itself. Like that's what, especially like our elders or grandmothers or whatever, that's what they went to. They knew something. I don't think they knew about glycine and proline and amino acids, but they knew fundamentally that this is giving the body something that it needs. And I've sipped on a lot of bone broth, and something that I'm always just amazed about is how it feels right. It just feels right. There's something like, I remember when I drink bone broth, we're supposed to use this. I've heard you describe it as a foundational food and how it's so prevalent in recipes and ancient cultures, and also like foundational to our health. What is it that you've learned about bone broth that actually makes it special? What is in it?
Yeah. So it's this really humble food, right? It's kind of the first fast food. We kind of think of it as like, oh, I'm going to do something with these leftover bones. But what you find is like, it's actually the very basic building blocks of cells. It's protein, it's amino acids, it's, you know, glycine, proline, it's got some glutamate. I mean, there's a rich amino acid profile. And what I love about it is, you know, I mean, glycine is one of the precursors for the master antioxidant glutathione. So yes, it is very real that you can drink chicken broth when you are not feeling well. And then you can feel better because you have given your body fuel to help, right, heal itself. And I think there's no voodoo behind chicken broth. It is supplying literally the building blocks that your cells need to be healthy. It provides vital protein, and it's just a really delicious, you know, way to heal leaky gut syndrome. And that happens when those tight junctures in the gut become loose, and then you can have toxins and even undigested food filtering into the bloodstream. And so bone broth comes in and really heals and seals the gut with the gelatin and collagen so that that's no longer happening. And so it's a beautiful process. It's something that I think speaks to like what is amazing about our bodies. Like, we would not even know any way. I mean, through so much research, we have found out what this process actually does. And yet we can drink it and say, my body needs this, right? Like, it's as simple or as sophisticated as you want to go. And so, yeah, I love it. It is a foundational food. That's actually what FOND means when we were picking the name for FOND. FOND means foundation or base in French. Cool. And we want to be the nutritional foundation and culinary foundation for your life, right? Because what you're eating is the first line of defense. It's also building up your terrain. It also builds resiliency. Like, it is the front line for the way that you thrive or, you know, can encounter some hardship in the world.
Yeah, amen. And you know, like, we'll get into some of the other benefits of bone broth too, and how it can help like skin and nails and all kinds of stuff. But like, this gut piece is really important because, you know, you go back to the grandfather of modern-ish medicine, if you will, like Hippocrates, all disease begins in the gut, and how much we're learning about that. You mentioned the GAPS diets, phenomenal work about how these things, a lot of them originate in the gut, the house of your immune system, your neurotransmitters, serotonin. Like, if the gut is off, which it probably was for you way back when you was told like, hey, you're not healthy enough to get pregnant, and then you are, and oh my God, you're probably going to lose this. Like, it's all of these modern insults, you know. And I think putting in something that's delicious and nutritious, proactively to buffer against that is kind of like you open up Pandora's box then to what else is possible. And I think it's just a really cool way of saying, you know, that it's a foundational food. It should be in everybody's staple. And maybe it's not something that everybody drinks every day, but you've got to keep revisiting this thing. And ideally, I have a hard time believing that somebody can overdo broth. You know, I think it's something that, like, if we can do more, we should be doing more.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's, you know, very rare instances in which we would say not yet, right? And those would be like severe and very sensitive histamine issues.
Histamines, right.
When, you know, you should start with a meat broth first, and that is like, it's an hour of or two what you can tolerate of poaching like a chicken and, you know, or beef, and starting from there. But really beyond that, I mean, we have seen it, you know, and even people who, we have a bone broth reset similar to what you guys do with your AB30, which we love. And for us, like, it is so powerful to hear these stories. People don't even realize just the inflammation they deal with day in and day out until they do a reset. And then they're like, oh my word.
Yeah.
I feel so much better. I didn't realize I had all of this inflammation. I didn't realize that I was so tired. I didn't realize until you kind of feel that release. And it's so simple, but it's like, you know, I make the analogy of it's giving the body printer paper. If you're giving it what it needs for the building blocks of cells, right? Protein, amino acids, collagen, gelatin, it can do what it needs to do. And the body has a wisdom.
I'm seeing such an overlap here with the products from Heart and Soil, and how it was like born of a need, really, because it's not too dissimilar, even though they're very different products. These are really foundational foods, very nutrient dense, very health promoting. In the case of organs, people like, I don't want to cook them because they're gross. So we tried to, you know, burr that out and say, like, well, how can we make them convenient? You've made it tasty and convenient, because a lot of people didn't know how to make this, didn't have the time to make it, or tried to make it, and it was not so delicious. And yours is very delicious. So now I'm curious, we've dove into the benefits a little bit. What makes FOND bone broth different? What makes it special?
Yeah, so, you know, we all have thoughts about our regulatory, right, people here in the States, but the USDA and the FDA only require bone broth, or broth in general, to be 1 parts meat to 128 parts water. That can be skin. That can be a bone. That can be any sort of muscle tissue. They don't define it. And so you have to be really, really careful. FOND, every jar of FOND has 1/2 pound of bones in it. That's what went into that jar. We are a 1-to-1 ratio. That is why the product gels. That is why it is the quality that you make at home. When you are buying a store-bought product that is a rehydrated powder or a reconstituted demi-glaze, I have concerns about the quality degradation in that process. I have concerns about the contaminants in that process. I mean, from microplastics to, you know, even heavy metals, like, there's just some things that I think people don't understand. They're not buying the bone broth that they make at home.
Yep.
There are very few people who make it traditionally the way FOND does, outside of the home. The second thing that we do that's different is we really play in a delightful way with like an aromatic. So all of our beverages, our bone broth tonics have shiitake, shallot, and sage, right? So you've got the shiitake, which is like the body and the meat of it. Then you have the shallot, which provides like just a slight bit of sweetness. And then you have the sage, which you smell. And so it's this very sensory experience. Like, from the time you open it, you know, you're having this delicious sort of enveloping experience that nourishment should be. And even, you know, our pure and unflavored, like specifically for the Heart and Soil audience, maybe the pure and unflavored beef and bone broth, chicken bone broth. Those are just bones, salt, and water. And to have a product that pure on the shelf, I'm very, very proud of. I'm very proud that people can go and buy that. And there's no caramel coloring. There's no yeasts. There's no added gelatin. Some people will add gelatin to make sure that it gels. So it's just the real deal. And I think that's why our customers really see a difference when they drink it or cook with it.
Yeah, it is the real deal. And I've if I've been in this, and anybody's been in the space for long enough, they've probably tried a bunch of different bone broths that they can find on the shelves, even in common supermarkets now. And there's like very liquidy versions, and you can just tell it's kind of heading in the right direction maybe, but you're like, this isn't the real thing. If you can carve out the time to make your own, you've got that like gelatinous wobble when you see it, and you're like, yeah, that's the good stuff. And that's exactly what yours does. Talk me through the process. Like, what is, you said you make it traditionally. What is the traditional method of preparing bone broth?
So, first, and a lot of companies will say this, but I can just speak to ours. Like we do slow simmer it. I'll start with the sourcing. We source regeneratively. We've sourced regeneratively before it had a name. We've always said, okay, if we're going to build this company to grow, our impact is going to have to be positive, right? We don't want to contribute to this system that's harming people. We want to contribute to a system that flourishes. And so regenerative agriculture is the obvious choice for that. And so we've sourced that way. We love that it's grown. So that's the first step, right, is the inputs. Like everything that we use is the highest quality. But the process itself is beautifully artisan, and it's traditional. It's what we didn't mess with it. It's what we've done for centuries, right? It's slow simmered. It's not boiled. I think people, we bring it to a boil, we clarify it, but then I think the slow simmering is what gives it that textbook culinary look. You can see through it. Yeah. Even though it gels, you can see through the product. And that is a trademark, hallmark, if you will, of a culinary product that is very high quality. It means that we have not emulsified things into the product that we don't want to be there. So it's very pure, it's very clear. And then for those who are interested in them, we do the infusion process. And so that's that turmeric, cracked pepper, thyme. For turmeric to be bioavailable, you need to have it with some sort of fat. And so we suggest that people put raw cream, butter, ghee in that, make a little bone broth latte, and have it with that cracked pepper.
Talk to me about a few of the other cool pairings you've got because it's not just for flavor and aromatics. That's the foodie in you coming out, but there's a method behind the madness here too, like medicinal compounds, complementary compounds.
Yeah, so there's a reason turmeric shows up both in our tallow line and in our bone broth line, and that freshly cracked pepper boosts the effectiveness of that curcumin 2,000%. They've proven that in multiple studies. And so making that even easier in the tallow, because we already put it in a fat for you, right? But we also, for me, and as you know, I have 6 boys, and so I'm familiar with that postpartum season. And I created products specifically to nourish during that as well. And so one of those flavors is our apple cider and bay leaf, and it has fennel in it. And fennel helps with milk production. This is allium free. So during a very sensitive digestive time, the digestive system does go under a lot of stress during pregnancy and the postpartum period. And so in that transition, it's like squished off to the side, and right. And in that transition, loving on that, nurturing that with fennel is really helpful. That apple cider vinegar as well, aiding in digestion, and then just not adding extra stress, right, with the alliums if you can't tolerate it at that time.
Very cool. Talk to me about some of the more broad-ranging effects of your bone broths. We focused a lot on the gut, which is obviously the house of a lot of things. But I start to think, and I'm curious of your perspective here, especially the female perspective, over like collagen and bone broth-rich products as a beauty product. Like, can we do bone broth over Botox, for example?
Oh, you're speaking to my soul. Yes. I understand the pressure, ladies, to do Botox, especially when everyone else is doing it and, smoothing out wrinkles in every photo, but it's a toxin. It's a neurological toxin, and you're shooting it into your face. And so, what can we do to prevent the natural effects of gravity, to stay beautiful as long as possible? And that's having that collagen to go in and smooth out, right, that skin, and to nourish it. And, the other thing that it's great for is hair, teeth, skin, nails. My boys, often say that I have claws. So I've learned to trim my nails short because my nails can get quite long. Remineralizing teeth. I think bone health, especially as women age and those estrogen levels can drop, and, the bone density is sort of in question there. Making sure that you have a product that can help replenish that is really important. That's also having a complex electrolyte profile, right? We use an ancient mineral salt that has more potassium than others. And so that's an essential electrolyte that you need in addition to others. So it's every part of the product. I think a lot of people at FOND, a lot of our customers use it for workout recovery.
Yeah.
So it's their electrolyte workout recovery, or it's their if they want something lighter, for muscle building, right? I think, one of my favorite stories at FOND, a dear customer, Karen, she had saved and she was going to the Galapagos Islands. She broke her foot. Okay. She broke her foot 8 weeks before she was going to go. Doctor's like, no way she's going. She's like, give me the broth. She's like, but you don't know about FOND. I'm not kidding you. Every day she made what she called her like bone tincture. And not to trigger the plant-based people, it did have some spinach in it. But it's like spinach, bone broth, raw cream, and she had it every day. And she had an exam at 6 weeks and completely healed. And I love that because this is a woman who went through the menopause stage, right? And she's, not having some of those hormones as regularly that can help with that bone density. And so I love that it showed up for her and helped her. So yeah, I'll never forget about that. She sent us photos of her being able to go.
Those stories make it all worth it, right? Even just one of them. And I'm guessing you guys have got dozens and hundreds of amazing comeback stories now and recovery things. But that's when you remember, this is it. It
amazes me. It feels humbling that I can be a part of someone's story like that, from making such a simple thing and not messing it up. Just not messing with it.
Yeah. Just, again, food the way nature intended. Yes. Something we've had forever and hopefully will have forever. But as you're talking there, I think, that there's so much pressure. I'm in the social media world, but thankfully I'm not a woman in that sense, so I don't feel as much of the pressure, but I just see it exactly what you're talking about, preventative Botox. Now we're talking about 20-year-olds getting Botox to offset the age. And I'm like, wait, I don't think that's going to do what you think it's going to do. And I think, if that's your choice and you're going to go down that route, exhaust all natural options first. And another craze at the minute is Ozempic, and with that comes Ozempic face, and collagen is the most abundant amino acid in the body. And they're talking about these drawn out faces that kind of look skeletal almost because they're losing so much of that connective tissue in the face. So if you're listening wherever you're at and whatever you're entertaining, get the basics right first and know that if collagen is the most abundant amino acid in the body, consume it. And then when you're given it, it will go to repair what needs repair. And if that's a bit more structure in your face, if that's healing the broken ankle or foot, it's going to do what it needs to do.
Another customer, Colleen, was drinking the bone broth to lose weight. Okay. She wanted to do that. What she realized in drinking FOND every day is the cellulite on the back of her legs went away. She wasn't doing anything, wasn't messing with it, not that I don't love, digging into that fascia, but she wasn't doing that. All she was doing was drinking the bone broth. And to your point, the body sends it where it needs to go to repair, right?
Yeah, it's super foundational. It's like the raw building blocks and the raw DNA to recover the way that you need to do it. Yeah, I think it's incredible. You mentioned another one of the ancient foods, sacred foods, something we're very bullish on here, pun intended, tallow. What's the story? When did the tallow vision start to emerge? Because I know it's a pretty new product for you guys. We've got some of it here on the table. We've had some of it. We've been eating it. It's delicious. You've got all these crazy flavors too. When did tallow come into the mix?
So if you think about it logically, if we're going to give you everything you need to make the cells in your body, we want those cell walls to have integrity too. And fat is very important for cell wall health. It is such a maligned product. And in college, the one thing I did say, because I loved fat food, so I got this right, young Alysa, eat fat, lose fat. Because I realized if I was eating more fat, I actually was losing more weight. So even then, just not even trying to be healthy, probably caring too much about, my appearance, I realized eat fat, lose fat. And it's more complicated than that, obviously, but we are in general grossly undernourished in the important fats. We might have prevalent consumption of seed oils, but I love tallow because just like bone broth helps you absorb more nutrients from the good food you're already eating, right? Prevents that leaky gut syndrome, helps with absorption. So does tallow, right? Because you've got those those vitamins that are only available in fat, right? They're fat soluble. So your A, your D, your E, your Ks. And most Americans are chronically deficient in that list I just rattled off, right? Specifically D and K, but sometimes A as well. And they're just things that when you can make what you're already doing, like I just think of my family, we're working so hard to feed our kids well, but we can't protect them or prevent every toxin that they're going to come in touch with.
Right.
If there's something I can do to help make their bodies more resilient just by changing my cooking oil, 100% I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
I'm already buying the regenerative meat. I'm already using bone broth. But if I'm just cooking that in olive oil that goes too high and turns toxic, or if I'm, drizzling canola oil on top, yikes. Like, I think there are some things that we don't realize that are setting back our health. And it sounds like maybe a little dogmatic, but think about it. Ancestrally, we have used animal fat to cook. We've used that. There's just no basis for the process that we get canola oil from.
I know.
Like the way that we have, and what it even has to do, it's so not even a food. And I think that's what you just get back to is it's not a food.
Yeah.
And yet you are making food with it.
Yeah, it's wild. I was curious about that, like how you appeal to people's, I don't even know what you want to call it, sensibilities, because you're preaching to the choir a little bit here with the nutrient density of tallow, but in the larger grand scheme of things, it's another demonized food. It's an animal fat, and we're just getting bombarded with this message of don't eat animal fats. There are, these saturated fats, that cholesterol problems, heart disease, but when you just try and square the circle of that's been around forever. Seed oils have been around for 50, 60 years, and the production of them, there's that classic clip, there's a few of them, but just look at how canola oil is made and tell me you want to eat that, and you somehow think that is healthier than this beautiful thing that comes from nature in front of us. It's hard. It must be frustrating as a person that's trying to get this in the hands of as many people as possible to combat a lot of that misinformation.
Yeah, I think, I keep waiting, and this is a little comment for the females, but I keep waiting for them to stop hurting us and telling us it's for our benefit. Like, whether it's birth control, whether it's avoid fat. I mean, Alzheimer's rates in women are very discouraging. And your brain needs fat. And especially ladies, those childbearing years, recovering from those childbearing years, women can be nutrient deficient for up to a decade. I mean, that's what they've measured. I don't know if they've measured beyond that. So if you can have a decade of nutrient deficiencies from one child, something is not right in the inputs.
Yeah.
Something is not right in the inputs. And so if we are solving these foundational nutritional or nutrient dense building blocks, right, we start to see, just myself as an example, my blood work was healthier with my sixth child than my first. That's amazing. That's amazing. And I'm not unique. I'm not doing these crazy rocket science things. If anything, I'm kind of going back to basics. And I think, what you asked when I thought of tallow, I wanted to launch this product in 2019. And I came up with it then, and I wanted to call it flavored meat butter. So aren't we glad, first drafts don't usually make it into the world. But I wanted people to know you can use it like this.
Yes.
And very wisely, our investors and our team just said, look, no one cares.
Thanks,
not
guys.
yet. Not yet. And it's a great product. And so when I started to see people talking about this, and I think that's one of the things as a founder, you do have to be disciplined to wait sometimes. We can want to run after all of the shiny things, but I had to put that back on the shelf. And then when I saw and I heard people were starting to talk about it, it was like, okay, now we're ready. We can do this. I always knew this was part of the lineup from the beginning.
Yeah.
But now is finally the time to bring it to life. So we're really excited. it's interesting. Although it may seem like it's maligned, it's almost like people have their fat and don't share about it. So, for example, H-E-B, which is a major retailer of ours, they brought in the tallow, and it was fast-tracked. It'll be on shelves August 5th.
Oh, amazing.
2 flavors.
Right on.
When we talk to other retailers, they're like, the data is supporting this. The data is supporting this. So I just want to encourage you, if you are being wary about your seed oils, people might not be talking about it, but you are not alone.
Yes, yeah. And it's really reassuring to see someone like H-E-B say, yeah, let's get this on the shelves, because they're not doing that recklessly. They are seeing a signal in the noise, and they're going like, oh, this is a hot product. Like, and that's good, because that's demand. There's demand there.
Yes.
And, here in Austin, it's amazing. I think there's probably 5 or 6 places I could go to after this and grab dinner now and find a seed oil free restaurant. So it is happening. There is an awakening happening, and it's really empowering, and it's kind of cool, because I think you've perfectly timed this, because I really do think the awareness around seed oils is really taking off, and the anti-seed oil movement is growing, and then people are naturally going to look for products, and all of a sudden, hey, look at this beautifully marketed, delicious, regenerative thing that also happens to coincide so holistically and organic with the other part of this messaging, which is like, yeah, we're talking about health and all of this stuff, but the regenerative piece. And I really respect the way that you guys have focused in on that, and really thinking about, look, if we're going to take things from the environment to create these products, let's do it in a way that puts back in.
Yeah.
Let's not do it in an extractive way. But I didn't want to let you just gloss over the fact that you was like, oh yeah, I've had 6 kids now and I'm healthy, because that's very impressive. We talk about peak performance, and I'm an athlete and stuff. If I think of anything that's peak performance from the female perspective, it's pregnancy and childbirth and mothering. That's like female peak performance right there. And to hear you say, and to see you healthy, vibrant, not with mushy mom brain, you can't string a sentence together, you're not clinging on for dear life, like bags under your eyes, 4 cups of coffee and a bottle of wine at night. Like, you're like, hey, and I'm not special. I'm just doing a lot of the basics, right? Yeah. I'm fueling with nutrition. But that must be something, eh? It must be something to be a mom of 6 boys. That's a high energy household. I know it is. And a business owner. And I don't think you could do what you did if you weren't healthy and thriving. So take me on a little bit of a journey there. How do you stay balanced tactically and practically? And yeah, it's cool.
So, I mean, so much there, but I will tell you, someone came into our home the other day. It was actually a notary, had to sign something. And she walked in our home and she looked at me and she said, there is peace and love in this home. Mm-hmm. And I was like, thank you. I'm done. I'm going to just stop here. But I love that because it is a high energy household. And I think something that I really want to do is allow our boys to be boys without just glossing, boys will be boys. We really prioritize a lot of outdoor time. Mm-hmm. One of the challenges about living in Texas when the summer is essentially winter is making sure that we get out during times when it is not crazy hot. So early in the morning, going for a walk bare feet, getting in water. One thing we've always done with our kids, but especially, the older ones don't always do it with me, but the toddler, we go up and we say good morning to the sun and we say good night to the sun.
Love it. Yeah.
Like even just simple things like that to help regulate. Boys are wonderful. They are sweet and amazing and often hyped up on sugar, like fake dyes, really terrible things that are just, they add to the toxic load in a way where we start to see behavioral things. So like when people see our boys, they're like, wow, they're so well behaved. Again, there's not some rocket science parenting happening here. We are just relieving some of the load that they are dealing with. And, we have non-negotiables in our home. Like we do not do food dyes. No way, no how. We do, we've done raw milk since before we felt like we could tell people.
Yeah, right.
We drank
when it wasn't
milk,
such a trend. Yeah.
And we would tell the boys, it's milk from the farm. And they have that experience of going to the farm with us and getting the milk from the farm.
Yeah, it's cool.
Getting and putting it, and so they see where their food comes from. I think as a mom achieving balance, running a company that is growing, you have to be humble enough to tap the mat and to say like, I can't do that next thing. I think a lot of, my moms out there, you don't give yourself enough grace to say, I'm done. And then What I mean by that is, even this week, Isaac and I had to take an inventory of the week. And I said, okay, I'm not going to be able to make food this week. So can you do the grocery shopping and be in charge of meals and support me in that way? And it's like, yes. Versus maybe a younger me would have made the meals anyway and been really bitter and resentful.
Yes.
Right? That I didn't. In humility, but also like advocacy, say I can't do this. And so for me, it's been about just embracing and having grace for the limits, but vocalizing them. We talked before, we have an amazing nanny who is a big part of our support system. That was hard for me to get over in the beginning. There's a lot of, kind of stigma around letting someone else raise your children. And we have seen it be such a blessing. Mm-hmm. We've seen it be such a blessing to adjust to having someone else in your home. And she became a part of our culture, and we love her, and she's amazing. But I think also having the help to say, hey, yeah, I do need help here. To raise the boys actually in the way that I want to raise them, I think they should be raised. It's not going to be by a screen.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to be busy and my husband's going to be busy, someone's going to be helping us to take care of them. So it's been a lot of just embracing limits, vocalizing them, and having grace for them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it takes a village, is the old adage, and it really does. It's challenging, and if you do need help because you've got many plates juggling, then it's okay to have somebody help in the raising of your children as long as they're in alignment, right? I think where people, might find resistance there is like, well, I'm sending my kids away to a bunch of strangers I don't know for 8 hours a day, and they're being raised by the state. And this isn't said to, shame anyone, because we have to do that. We've got to do what we've got to do. But then you've got to really maybe work to offset some of that stuff if they're being programmed in the way that you wouldn't like them to, or in an ideal world. So the fact that you can find these people, and I believe that, people are out there, and it's lucky to have people in your life like that, but it's possible. Where there's a will, there's a way. You can find them. And it's really cool that you've got that.
Yeah, we feel very blessed. And, that was a line we had to draw too. I homeschooled our kids in addition to running FOND until my 6th child.
Yeah.
And I just had to say, this has been a beautiful season. I might get to do this again. But right now, I need someone else to help with their education. Yeah. So we found a classical school that also taught Latin. Yeah. I loved teaching Latin at home. There's no, phones allowed, no pop culture talk. And we felt comfortable with that for the time that it is. And and that allows us to approach that unplanned turn in the road with gratitude and acceptance, and not, just chagrin and frustration every time we have to drop them off. Yeah. So I think it's a lot about just, again, like I said, there's certain things we won't compromise on educationally either. And, making sure that we had those in place made us feel better about getting help.
Amazing. Talk to me about adversity, because I know you've had your fair share of it, business building, and I'm sure personally that comes with business building. I know you guys had a costly fire and things like that caused a loss of products. Not just that, though, the pain of reconciling that and all kinds of stuff. Like, what's facing and overcoming adversity in life and business taught you about life and business and motherhood and everything?
Yeah, I said to one of my employees today, we kind of had a full circle moment with a really cool opportunity. And I said, wow, I feel like every wrong conversation I've had was preparing me to have the right answers for the right conversation. And that took years to just have this one moment. And so the question of how do we approach adversity, I think it's really helped that FOND has not been my only identity. Mm-hmm. That I am a mother, that I am a wife, that I love to garden. There are these things where, especially in America, we can make our career our identity. And that pursuit is very harmful. It's harmful because there are so many things outside of your control. It's harmful because you can have what you're talking about. We've had 3 extinction level events in our business.
Oh, wow.
It is very difficult to wake up the next day and to do the next thing. But then at the same time, if it's not my entire identity, if I believe it's going to be okay, if I know I'm loved by my husband and my kids, and that I have other things about me. I am not my work. I can solve the work stuff and then I can leave it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of about boundaries, right? I mean, I think in this success obsessed culture, everyone has to be beautiful and ageless and successful and wealthy and eat all the right things and never get sick. And like, I'm sorry, I don't live on that planet, but maybe you do. Like, that's not my experience here. It's in fact, and like, what are the lessons I want to teach my children? If you're a good manager, good things will happen to you. No, like, you are going to experience difficulty and adversity and you will be strong to face it, right? It doesn't mean it can't hurt you. It doesn't mean sometimes you won't feel broken and like, oh my goodness, I'm so sad. I don't know if we'll see a future here. But I think it's that balance, right? And so the first, extinction level event we had 2 warehouses burned down in September of 2022. And that's kind of one of those phone calls that, my COO called me and she said, Alysa, there's been a fire. And I was like, okay. And she was like, 2 warehouses have burned down, including the manufacturing facility. And I was like, okay. And I was in the middle of raising a Series A. I had more meetings. And I have to tell you, y'all, it is so difficult to raise money as a female. It is. And I'm the type of person who's like, anything you do, I can do better. Objectively, very difficult to raise money as a female. I had more meetings than anyone else that our investment banker had ever worked with. And it didn't matter. Overnight, it didn't matter. We couldn't meet our projections. We had no product. We had to start life-saving maneuvers. And I think what's really difficult about that is, most of us account for, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to not let that happen. But what happens when it's something completely outside of your control?
Right.
Like, you can control all you want, but like, there's nothing that accounts for that. And so I think I learned through that I'm a good wartime general. I'm proud of that. I had a lot of people tell me, hey, I would have just stopped. And I believed that giving quality without compromise to people was worth fighting for. And I felt if we left the shelves at this time, we would never be able to get back.
Mm-hmm.
And there wouldn't be a product to take our place. Like if I felt like someone else was really doing this well and I could say, okay, I'm going to let them solve this problem, I might have made a different decision. But I knew my family would miss this product. I knew our customers would miss this product, and I knew there was nothing else like it. So I thought it was worth fighting for. Our investors agreed. And somehow somehow, right? It's like the resilience of people showing up, and that shows my team. Like, no one left on my team.
Right.
They didn't even know if they would have a job in 6 months. We lost $5 million worth of sales. Like,
wow.
They didn't, and they stayed so that this product could be here, so that we could make this impact, with these farming partners and these relationships that we've built. And that was amazing to me. And so we survived the fire. We finally, our co-packer finally is able to get a facility approved by the FDA and USDA to produce in the interim, right? And 1 out of 3 lids starts failing. And we were like, what? So we've worked so hard to preserve this business. And then again, completely out of our control, the lids, the manufacturer of the lids messed up. We had over 100,000 lids that failed. Damn. So so we're barely surviving, right? We've made it through the fire, and then it's another attack. And what is so crazy about this is I found out that we were pregnant in this just turmoil, right? And so you have the founder aspect that's like, okay, I got to solve this. Then you have the very physical aspect of like, wow, I also need to focus on protecting this.
Yeah, right.
because I can't let this be impacted.
Yeah.
And so it was a very difficult season. And then, so we finally get through the lid issue. The manufacturer's like, yeah, this is our fault. We'll reimburse you. Fine. We lost 30% of our customer base.
Wow.
They were having, and I don't blame them. Like, they were having lids show up, and they were, now thankfully, none of this product had gone onto shelves, but we hated that customers were experiencing that. This is a premium product and it's breaking on the way to your home. Like, you should never experience that. And so I understood it. To this day, I'm so thankful to the customers who are with us. And then following that moment, there are these like ambulance chasers, whether it's accessibility lawsuits, things like that, where we had the day we figured out the lid issue, we received a predatory lawsuit. And it was just like,
whoa,
the hit
again.
The hits kept coming. And so, navigating, and again, that's someone doing it to you.
Yeah,
and you're like, oh my word, I'm trying to help people. I'm trying to give them a product that is better for them. And you're going to find this loophole in the state of New York and sue me because this one product wasn't redirecting correctly. Like, there's so much there, and the research that they do to know you're going to settle because it costs you as much to retain, right? And so I think, I'm being more transparent than maybe I would be to just say, you can survive really hard things, but you have to have the support system. Like, if my team would have said, hey, we're out, like, I think when people look at the founder, they're like, how did you do that? A founder is as strong as their team. And I will say that every single day. The team that I've built at FOND, I am so proud of you guys, and you are amazing, and you are the reason. I mean, even to launch Tallow, coming out of, like, we just get back to the sales that we had from the fire, and then we're trying to launch a new product, right? It's really difficult. And so, it's the team, it's Isaac's support of me, it's, our investors' staunch support of me. And then I think it's also the grace to say, hey, we're going to try the best that we can, but we can't control every outcome.
Yeah.
And there has to be a point at which you just have to be okay to walk away.
Yeah. 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 The leap of faith, not the leap of safety or guarantee, right? It's at some point, it's just like, we're just going to do this. And, it's that kind of cliched thing that as long as you did your best, you'll be okay with the outcome. And thankfully, you've had the grit and determination to see this thing turn around and swing it back. But if it didn't, if you do truly, or are able to truly look at yourself in the mirror and say, we did everything we could, then you can make peace with that, especially if your entire identity is not wrapped up in that one thing and you have these other things. And as you're speaking, the importance of the team and these support systems, it's not too dissimilar to it takes a village again, because like FOND is your seventh baby, I would say, and it's like nurtured in a slightly different way. And it doesn't have a literal heartbeat, but it clearly has a soul of some sort. And that's why these team members didn't run away when the going got tough either, because they're clearly bonded to the mission. And that's magical, because you can't buy that, you can't fake that. That's something that's transcendent of just a salary or something. It's a mission. And that to me speaks volumes for this movement, this collaborative effort between different companies that are ultimately trying to do the same thing, which is give people back their sovereignty of health. Like, the one thing that we all want and all should have is like this just God-given right to health. And it's really cool to see you doing that. And I'm very grateful, selfishly, because now we still get to have your amazing products that you didn't crumble. And once you had to lean heavily on people, that adding to the mix there, that you also found out you're pregnant amongst all of this, and knowing like, hey, I don't want to let this extreme level of stress compromise this pregnancy and this baby, because we do know those things have an effect, right? What did you really lean into or lean on, and how did you work through that?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, I'm a Christian, so it's a lot of prayer, a lot of meditation, a lot of believing right in that divine plan, and trusting in that. And I would say secondly, for me, that's the ultimate like support system. Secondly, it's Isaac. I had this goal, and you're going to just like oh, you sweet thing. I wanted to deliver my 6th baby. My 5th was easy, almost painless. It was such a beautiful experience. And I wanted to have this like culminating, since I was 15 or 16, I'd said I wanted to have 6 boys. So we're having this 6th boy. It feels like it might be it. And I want to deliver this baby. Oh my word. Samuel was 2 weeks overdue. I did not have gestational diabetes, but I was struggling. And, you know, I had a really good care team. I think that was the other thing. When you're a natural crunchy mama, you kind of take on your health too.
For sure.
And I had to say, I have to give this to my natural doctor that I trust. She's a functional MD and she's amazing. But I had to tell her, I am giving this to you. I need you to help take care of me because I don't have the brain space with everything I'm dealing with at work to take care of myself. Right. So I had a good care team, right? And it was a really difficult decision. Do we have the baby? You know, I've had 6 unmedicated births, 2 at home, 4 at the birth center. And it was like, okay, do we feel like, and we always evaluate this. What does this baby need? What does this body need? Is this a hospital birth? Is it not? Do we feel like we need additional things? We pray over that decision. We make that decision with the healthcare practitioner and the midwife. And we had Samuel at home. Sheer pain the whole time. Back labor. I'd never had back labor.
Yeah.
This is my first back labor. And I needed help the entire time. And before, you know, so go into my 5th birth, I basically, you know, I labored alone. I had the baby into the midwife's hands, but it was very easy experience. Still not without pain, but, you know, and the 6th to just need help every step along the way. Like, you can see a theme in my story, right? Like, being okay with that and saying, hey, maybe my plan to, in my self-sufficiency, deliver my 6th baby was not good for me. Maybe that wasn't what was best for me. Maybe it was best for me to know that I could trust people when I needed them, that my midwife knew in that moment what was better to do than I did. So we had Samuel at home. He was 10 pounds, 4 ounces.
Whoa.
And it was beautiful in a completely different way than any of my other births.
Yeah.
And healing almost.
Well, yeah, birth. My wife had our 2nd son at home in a natural, free, wild pregnancy, and I caught the baby and everything. It was incredible. It was like a ceremony, right? Yes. And in ceremony, you don't always get what you want. You get what you need. And it's kind of similar in this birth. You didn't get the birth you wanted necessarily. You got the one you needed. Yeah. And in hindsight, you're like, oh, that's the one I wanted, of course, because I needed it, you know? It's interesting to hear like these themes that keep repeating, you know, this surrender experiment, if you will, this reliance on other people. If you now reverse engineer that in hindsight, is that something that has just been kind of in your map of life that you've had to solve? Were you just like a stubborn go-getter, like I'm going to solve all the world's problems on my own as a kid or anything like that?
I was yes. I maybe not like quite as arrogant as like all the world's problems, but like maybe every problem in the US. Like I think self-sufficiency, you know, I had emergency surgery when I was 5 years old. The top 2/3 of my kidney and utero did not grow attached. And so if you can think over that 5-year period, it became, you know, septic. And
oh, wow.
So I have this, I didn't want that. I sort of had this, not imposter syndrome, but like, don't put me in that sick bucket. Don't put me in that sick bucket. And, you know, I can do anything you can do. I can do anything you can do. And there is a different type of strength in acknowledging limits and letting other people be involved. That experience is richer. Yeah. I would tell you it is far more beautiful. And, you know, there's something about that. I'll never forget that Invictus, you know, I am the captain of my fate. Mm-hmm. I am the master of my soul. And like, isn't it pretty to think so? But that is so not life as we experience it. And so I'm grateful that what I've been through has helped me hopefully model for my children, the employees that I'm blessed to work with at FOND and partners, that, you know, there is still a rich life to be had when things do not go according to plan, when you need the help of other people. I think maybe as a woman, you know, I also felt it was weak to need help.
Yeah.
And so I had to be able to do it. And if I couldn't do it, then I, you know, was a disappointment to the entire female sex as well. I think there's just that's such a small view.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm grateful it's been broadened.
It's so important. It's so important for everybody, the men listening too, because we can be really stubborn. Like, I'm a man, I don't need no help. Everybody does. We like, what's that saying? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. We don't want to go fast and burn out. We want to go far. You need people. And what you're speaking is something I talk about all the time. Like the power and strength in vulnerability, not the weakness in it. You know, like Gabor Mate said that vulnerability etymologically comes from like wound. So vulnerability is like the ability to open yourself up to be wounded. But if you do that consciously, it's a very, very brave thing. It's a very, very brave thing to say, like, here are these sensitive parts of me and I'm asking for help. It's not weakness. I think culture's done a really good job of telling us that it's weakness because, just figure it out. Work harder. Do more. Oh, you had 6 kids, should have 10. You know, like, come on, calm down, right? It's hard. Life is hard. So I just think there's a lot of wisdom and strength in that. And usually wisdom comes with going through some shit, unfortunately.
I know. I wish there was another way, like, especially for my kids. I'm like, just don't make it as hard.
Yeah, right. But maybe we need it, right?
Yeah.
Maybe like problems aren't a bug; they are a feature of life. And maybe the only problem with problems is thinking we shouldn't have problems, and that they're actually here for us. And they suck going through them. Man, do they suck going through them. But in hindsight, there's probably a weird part of you that's kind of grateful because you're here now and you're still doing it, and it gives you so much more like resilience. There's so much more richness to the story. So
I think anyone who's been through suffering, it's a complicated thing. You will never be the same, and that's usually a good thing, but there's no going back to who you were before.
It's powerful, like Phoenix, giving Phoenix vibes, right? Rise from the ashes, but it's first got to set on fire. You've had literal fires in your life. It's hot and it's scary, but we made it. So looking ahead now, kind of landing this one, we're back. That stuff is behind us. The lessons have been integrated. It's eyes forward. It's world domination of tallow. It's screw the seed oils. We're taking over. What's next? What are you excited for? What is FOND looking and to do and accomplish and grow into?
So one thing I'm really proud of that we did is, you know, we have our team going through that tragic experience of seeking funding that we needed and then not getting it for something that happened outside of us. We rebuilt the entire company so that, you know, the goal is not to ever need funding again. And we have finally hit that milestone, which is amazing. And I think what's so cool about that is that also gives us autonomy to say, do we ever sell or not? A lot of people have asked me, like, okay, you've almost done this for 10 years. Like, is this the goal? What do you know? And I will tell you, we are not done yet. And the things that we had to learn and, you know, the moves that we had to make for profitability so that we wouldn't need that outside investment have actually enabled and opened the doors to launch product X and product Y. And I think that's so cool. Like something that you have to do as a result of a tragedy then opens itself up, right, for the future that you would never have been able to walk through those doors if that didn't happen. And so we're really excited. We're very excited to, you know, innovate in the snack aisle and how people nourish themselves in between meals, how they think about that, especially with children. I think that's a huge need that I just see in like,
it's big.
You know, we don't really eat a lot of snack food, and people ask, how can you feed like a family of 8 regeneratively? And I'm like, well, it's an investment, but it's an investment in resiliency. And we also, I mean, we're not eating a ribeye every night. Like we eat a lot of ground beef and chicken thighs. There's a lot of economy meats in what we eat. They're also very nourishing parts, right? And so for us, we see sort of the insidious, like real harm done in that snack time. So that's where we'd like to go.
Love that.
Thinking, you know, to the future, there's a lot of things in the home that are toxic. How can we help there, right? When we think about foundation and what that means, how can we help in the home address some of the toxicity there? So we're excited about, you know, I know I'm teasing it a little bit, but
course.
we're excited and hope people stay tuned for the journey to see what we do.
Yeah, I think so. It definitely sounds like you're far from done yet. You're still got some big rocks we're trying to change here, so that's cool. Where can people go to keep up with the journey, and where can they find these now? Because I hear you're in stores now and stuff. That's cool.
So the bone broth is in Sprouts nationwide. We're in the Fresh Market, HEB, Whole Foods now in the Southwest region. So that's really exciting. And then the tallow launches at HEB in August. But of course, you guys can find us at fondbonebroth.com. We are active on Instagram at fondbonebroth. And that's where we love to really engage with people. So we would love for you to join us there.
Amazing. Thank you very much. That's how you wrap it up. Inspiring, wise, powerful, incredible products. Check them out, fam. Thank you very much. And we'll see y'all next week. Peace. All right, friends. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Radical Health Radio. We got a fresh new podcast for you every Wednesday. If you enjoyed the show, consider liking, subscribing, reviewing, and rating us on your podcast platform. It helps us spread this message of radical health. We'll see you next week.